A celebrated scientific breakthrough collapsed in public because of something thinner than a fingerprint. In March of 2014, one of the most respected physics teams on Earth stood in front of cameras and announced what sounded impossible. Deep beneath the frozen skies of Antarctica, the BICEP-2 collaboration believed they had found direct evidence of the moment the universe was born. Not indirect clues, not theoretical support, actual physical fingerprints left behind by the Big Bang itself. And for a few weeks, the entire scientific world believed them. But buried inside the same image that promised one of the greatest discoveries in modern physics was a microscopic contaminant no one had properly eliminated. And that tiny mistake would tear the entire discovery apart. At the center of the announcement sat a strangely beautiful image. A cosmic microwave background sky map, glowing in swirling bands of color. To most people, it looked abstract. To cosmologists, it looked historic. Because those spiral patterns appeared to show something physics had been hunting for decades. Primordial gravitational waves. Tiny distortions in space-time created fractions of a second after the birth of the universe itself. If real, this image was not just another discovery, it was proof that cosmic inflation happened. The single most important missing piece in understanding how everything began. And BICEP-2 had found it first. The telescope responsible for this breakthrough was sitting nearly 8,000 feet above sea level at the South Pole. It was small by astronomical standards. No giant mirrors. No orbiting spacecraft. Just an instrument designed with one brutal purpose. Measure the polarization of ancient radiation left over from the Big Bang. Researchers spent years collecting data. Then finally, the image appeared. The polarization map showed a pattern called B-mode polarization, a subtle twisting signal predicted by inflation theory decades earlier. The signal strength looked stronger than expected. Far stronger. Which should have been the first warning. But instead, it felt like confirmation. The world reacted instantly. Headlines exploded across every major news outlet. Physicists openly cried during the press conference. Some were already talking about Nobel Prizes. That same colorful sky map now meant something extraordinary. It was no longer just data. It had become evidence for the origin of reality itself. But underneath that celebration, something fragile was already breaking. Because BICEP-2 had measured microwave radiation reaching Earth from every direction in space, and there was a problem. The universe is not empty. Between Earth and the edge of the observable cosmos sits an enormous cloud of galactic dust. Tiny particles floating inside the Milky Way. And under certain conditions, those particles can polarize light in patterns dangerously similar to primordial gravitational waves. The BICEP team knew this. Every cosmologist knew this. So they tried removing the dust contamination mathematically. But there was one dangerous limitation. They did not have access to complete dust maps. And the race had already started. Because confirming inflation was the equivalent of discovering the Rosetta Stone of modern cosmology. Whoever published first would own one of physics' greatest triumphs. So instead of waiting for better verification, researchers used partial data from another experiment. The European Space Agency's Planck collaboration. Except Planck had not yet released its full dust polarization maps publicly. BICEP researchers estimated the missing values using information extracted from presentation slides. Not raw scientific data. Slides. And suddenly, the same beautiful polarization map meant something very different. Because if the dust estimate was wrong, the entire discovery was built on contaminated assumptions. Still, the paper was published. The celebration continued. and the scientific world accepted it, at least for a while. Then the pressure shifted. Across Europe, researchers inside the Planck collaboration had been building the most detailed map of galactic dust ever created. Unlike BICEP 2, Planck observed the entire sky. And when their analysis finished, the comparison was devastating. The exact same swirling polarization pattern that BICEP believed proved cosmic inflation existed naturally inside ordinary interstellar dust clouds. The signal matched perfectly. Not approximately. Perfectly. Suddenly, the famous sky map changed meaning again. Weeks earlier, it represented one of humanity's greatest discoveries. Now it looked like contamination no one had removed. And that was where the real system failure became visible. The telescope had worked perfectly. The sensors were functioning. The calculations were internally consistent. No hardware failed. No software crashed. Nothing physically broke. The entire collapse came from one hidden dependency: verification. Science had quietly relied on something more fragile than technology itself: independent confirmation. And under pressure to publish first, that safeguard had been bypassed. The smartest physicists on Earth had mistaken contamination for the birth of the universe. In early 2015, BICEP 2 and Planck released a joint paper. No celebration this time. No historic announcement. No Nobel Prize discussions. Just a quiet admission. The original signal contained no statistically significant evidence of primordial gravitational waves. The discovery was gone. That same polarization map returned one final time. Nothing about the image had changed. Same colors. Same patterns. Same spiraling lines. But its meaning had completely reversed. What looked like proof of the beginning of existence was just ordinary dust floating inside our own galaxy. And the consequence reached far beyond one failed paper. It exposed something uncomfortable about science itself. Breakthroughs rarely collapse because instruments stop working. They collapse when pressure convinces experts to trust conclusions before trust has been earned. In the end, physics was not defeated by bad technology. It was defeated by particles too small to notice. Dust changed everything.